Hey guys, welcome to the Rollout. I'm Lindsay Rousseau.
And I'm Genevieve Marie. Hello and welcome. We've got an
All right.
amazing show for you
I
today.
know, so excited. You are watching the Fabled 42 Network, where we create community through chaos, gaming, and friendship. As always, a huge thanks to our amazing sponsors, Griffin Co. Check them out for all of your 3D printed terrain needs. And our other sponsor, Critical Dice. So please check out our website for discount codes to both of those amazing shops. And please support these great artists and crafters, which are a huge part of our community. All right, let's dive into some news.
Yes. All right. So there is some actually very interesting news for Californians anyway. California reopenings are going to start April 1st. And with that comes the reopening of theme parks. So that means Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, Universal Studios, all those places that people have been missing. They will be opening at 15% capacity. Whether or not that this is going to affect spikes in COVID cases, we don't know. I have mixed feelings on this, very mixed, but that's what's happening. And before I forget, I do want to also shamelessly plug more merch. It looks red here, but it's hot pink. It is our rollout coffee mug with the Fabled 42 square on the back. Oh, you got the purple.
I've got my purple one. So there we go.
It's so cute. Trade me. And then we also have our little bags, our little makeup bags. They're so cute. I love them. So shameless plug, we have these on Teespring. The link will be in the chat. So cute. Go pick yourself up some merch.
Yeah. And also, Paizo just announced they are now going to be putting out one-shots. They're debuting with their Sundered Waves one shot, which is the first one coming out. And it's like this pirate puzzle-filled dungeon that just looks really exciting. And it's about 3 to 4 hour sessions, comes with pre-made character sheets and stuff like that. So for those of you who don't necessarily have time, or, digital gaming is hard for you and you don't want to do a full campaign, check out these new one-shots that they're going to be putting out. They look really fun, and the art's super cute on the Pathfinder series. So yeah. All right. The reason we're here today, guys, is we've got, spring equinox coming up here pretty soon. And we thought it would be really fun to talk about kind of the influence and history of Wicca and paganism and witchcraft within D&D and tabletop gaming. And so we have two fantastic guests here to join us. We have Ash Minnick, who is fantastic. And of course, you all remember B. Dave Walters. So welcome, guys. Thank you for being here.
Yay! I didn't know we were doing custom mugs. I just have this one. I love my bed.
That's a good one too.
I have mugs with my face on them, but none of them are nearby. So
mugs with your mug on them?
I have mugs. Ooh, yes, but none within reach.
Yeah. Ash, why don't you? We'll just have you guys introduce yourselves a little. Ash, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Ash. Hello. I just consider myself a professional nerd. There's not one thing I do, it's all the things. But I do a lot of tabletop gaming. I do some tabletop gaming with B. Dave Walters. I produce an event called D&D in a Castle, in which people can go play D&D in a castle with professional DMs like B. Dave Walters. He DMs, by the way. I'm ruining his intro by saying it all.
You're making it better. It sounds better when you say it, Ash.
Yeah, I produce events. I produce content. I produced Game the Game and How to Play when that was a show. I also do props, like prop master stuff in the TV world with the adult people. Yeah, and I'm working on a bunch of stuff right now that I can't talk about.
That's the way it goes. I see that you're also a professional Muppet hunter.
Oh, I made him. He's my puppet. I got the base from a show. I don't remember the show. It was like a Netflix show I was working on. We had these extra things, and I was like, what can I mount? My puppet head.
That is,
it is true
epic.
that I've seen the full puppet, and you were so proud that you've made him, and now you're so proud that you've slain him in honorable combat there.
I feel like Muppet Slayer could be a new subclass. Just saying.
Now weird.
when you love something, you cut its head off and mount it on
And
the
you
wall.
mount it.
It's the only way to stay
So
together
you'll-
forever. Yeah, you went full Red Sonja on him. I appreciate it.
I'm a Silence of the Lambs fan.
He's like my co-host. He's just always there.
Yeah, staring
My
at
little
you,
Scottish
watching
puppet.
you,
I'm super
judging
with
you.
you. I'm super with you as Muppet Slayer as subclass now, by the way.
Yeah, Muppet Slayer.
Muppet
There we
Slayer.
go.
Yes.
I feel like you two know people that can make this happen.
I think we are people that could make that.
And the character sheet drops tomorrow.
Coming to DM's Guild.
And B Dave, I know you've been on before. You were amazing, but just for folks who haven't met you before, tell us a little bit about yourself.
B. Dave Walters. I say words about things. I think you almost have to like exert conscious effort to have not seen something I'm on by now. Brava. If you've evaded me up until now, but too late. I caught up to you. You can find me wherever fine streaming content can be located. It is true. I go out of my way to be near Ash as often as I can, but it's like we're so busy. It's like when planets come into synchronous orbit for a time and then disperse.
We only get to hang out when people are paying us to be in a room together. It's basically
Honestly,
what
yeah,
it
because
is.
we don't get to just have fun anymore.
No.
But that's the best. Like when you get paid to be around the people you like,
True
doing the
story.
things you like.
That is, it is
That's the
hard
dream.
fun. That is true. Yeah, all over the place. Mondays, C&E Games at 11 for Champions of Lore, at 4 for Idle Champions Presents. Tuesday, Heroes of the Plains is returning in 2 weeks. Wednesday, an unannounced thing. Thursday, we haven't announced what the Black Dice Society is, but it's going to be happening on Thursdays, I'll tell you that. And Friday, some right now, Ash and Ruin. So, and
Can you talk about your new show yet?
nope.
Okay, then I didn't say anything.
I mean, no, yeah.
I thought I saw something posted on the internet.
No,
so maybe-
you see, we've begun vague booking, Ash. We've begun vague. The fact
So
that
there you go.
is
Here's
a
more
thing
vague booking. Follow
There's
us
a
on
new
social media.
thing.
There's a
It's
new
got
thing.
people in it.
that's including stuff. Yeah,
It might have to do with dice.
maybe even I don't know.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I won't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that's it. That's me. And I think a lot of people don't know that I was a religion minor in college, and I wrote the spirituality column for BeliefNet for a few years. Like I've written hundreds of articles on the subject, but I mean, in the geekosphere, it very rarely comes up. So when I just say things out of no, people are like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's the thing."
Well, I feel like today it will come up.
Here we are. My
Here
body's
we
ready.
are.
It's time for you to spread your wings and show us what you got.
That link's in the bio. That's on the that's behind the
I mean-
paywall to like spread my wings and show you what a gun. That's yeah, right.
Fable After Dark, folks.
Fabled after dark.
We have that. It follows our Vampire the Masquerade shows and all of that. Okay, well, let's dive in. So like I said, we have the spring equinox coming up, and we did an episode about holidays in tabletop gaming and how a lot of those have been pulled from various Celtic or Viking or different types of backgrounds. But you guys have been in this world for a really long time, and you both know a lot about witchcraft and paganism and religion in general. So what are some of the things that you've seen that have shown kind of the influence that some of these different belief systems, or not even, you can't even really call them belief systems, but things like paganism and Wicca and witchcraft have had on
They are belief systems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, do you want to start?
I was gonna say after you, ma'am, because I'll soak up all the oxygen. So I'm gonna let you start.
It is a difficult topic though to parse, because it is, witchcraft and paganism is notoriously misrepresented in everything, for the most part. And there's this idea of witches and pagans being something other and unhuman, and I see that a lot in not only television descriptions, but also RPG descriptions, where it's like, imagine a world where witches are real. And it's just like, it's just an earth religion. It's just an earth religion. It's not like all, and that stems from back, 1600 years ago when the Catholic Church was trying to convince everybody that they were devil worshippers, blah, 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 blah. So it's a difficult topic to parse because there's some RPGs that feel like they do a good job at presenting these magical creatures. And just by presenting them as that, it's still like adding on to this idea that they are something other when it's just an earth religion. So that's how I'll start. Vijay, why don't you get into specifics?
Yeah, well, firstly, just for those of you that may not be familiar with some of these things, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, secrecy is a component of these faiths. Like, you just don't talk about it. Largely as a byproduct of it kind of could get you killed for a few centuries. And oftentimes it is passed down via family, via closed social group. That is, of course, changing, but that's why oftentimes it's funny when you know anything about the path. You'll be talking to people and somebody will say something and somebody else will say something. You just sort of like look at each other for a second. Like Ash and I have had this exchange. I mean, lots of people where you're like, oh, and then the conversation just kind of keeps going.
It's very similar to Christians back in the day when they were hiding and they'd like draw fish in the sand. Like I feel like that sometimes. You're just like, I like your earring. I too enjoy
fish on Fridays. Yeah, right. So yeah, it's in this idea that of the othering of witchcraft. I mean, it is by no means over. I mean, I don't mean to spoil anything, but WandaVision and Agatha's entire backstory and all of that. I mean, like, it's still. I think that was done so fantastically that it's kind of like, well, okay. I don't know. I realize we're talking about gaming, but this is the most recent.
I know. I was thinking that I don't want to spoil anything, but it is sort of talking about comic book lore that's been around forever.
Sure.
Yeah. How do we feel on? I'm not going to go into deep, but how do we feel on chatting about WandaVision spoiler wise? Like,
I mean, I would just personally,
I feel like we can put a disclaimer because this will be, it's Wednesday, so
if you know nothing about,
if you know nothing, la 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 right now, spoilers may follow.
If you don't even know her title, stop listening for like a couple minutes.
True. Also,
we'll all do this when we're done waving.
I was about to say, unless you're 12, I look down on you, you casual, for not knowing who Wanda Maximoff is. But okay, fine. No, zone of safety. Zone of safety.
Gatekeep here, BJ.
Zone of safety.
No
zone of safety.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, in Marvel, Wanda is a Scarlet Witch, and then Agnes is. I love WandaVision. I have a lot of trouble with their portrayal of witches because they're not witches. Like, and there's no reason to call them witches. They're just magical beings with magic. And the idea that a coven of witches would punish another witch for studying stuff or for like learning too much is ridiculous, because it doesn't make any sense, So it's just, for me, it's just like, okay, all right, let's just use the word witch, and it's just basically Jedis. Like, they're a bunch of Sith, basically.
Yeah, it was. Well, again, as a proud Sith American, I deeply approve of this. Yeah, it was an interesting take on Agatha Harkness's real origin in the mental gymnastics of explaining Wanda in a world with no mutants. But I believe, and this isn't a spoiler, this is just what I think they're doing. I think they're going now into the multiverse of madness with Doctor Strange, and she's going to create the mutants. Whereas in the comics, she erased all the mutants. Here, she's going to create the mutants. But it was, and that's not against spoilers, my fan theory. But yeah, it was a lot of interesting mental hoops to jump through to take her, because they already made her not a mutant by having been a Hydra experiment. And then they're like, well, but you weren't a Hydra experiment. You're the ultimate world-ending witch, the Scarlet Witch. Duh! And
chaos magic is evil and bad.
One should have that power.
And I was like, okay. Well, and there's also a there's a sub-component, especially in the literary portrayal of it, where oftentimes the witch was just the stand-in for feminine power, period, in during times in history where women didn't have any. And so it's, ooh, this dark forbidden thing that got a lot of, like, the same way oftentimes vampirism was a stand-in for sex, and it's like an analog to any of those type of things in the form of the the hedonistic vampire. Ooh, here's the terrible witch. But to bring it back to your original question, it's improving, but it's by no means gone. I mean, even right now in Van Richten's guide, you've got the Hex Blood Warlock that you're descended from a hag, which is one step over. I mean, okay, hags are monsters, okay, but there's like,
but we know what you're saying.
Yeah, there's 3 of
Old
them.
women,
and they got
old women who have their are scary.
Yeah.
What I find interesting in D&D specifically, because you're bringing up the hags and all of that, is and a lot of RPGs do this, where they pick and choose what they like about paganism and witchcraft and what they dislike, and they use all of the tropes and all of this. They're like, okay, this is a hag, this is an evil witch, whatever, that's all the monster stuff. But like an athame, that's cool, so everybody gets an athame. And then and they pull from these things, and sort of like warlocks have a lot of witchcraft adjacent aspects to them. But it's like, oh no, it's just, that's cool, that part is cool, but witches are evil, but we like all of their stuff,
Right.
And or like spell components, it's like everybody gets spell components, but hags are evil.
Summoning as performing a spell as a ritual. Yeah. Yeah, it's I think in D&D in general, which again, I've put many hours and years of my life into, as has Ash.
You got this. Get through it.
I can word.
You word hard.
It is latent by 50 plus years of continuity, some of which was problematic, much of which was inherited from Tolkien, which he inherited from Finnish mythology. And to their credit, they are trying to improve. I know they are, because my career largely exists due to them trying to improve. Like, my very vocal criticisms of the portrayal of Chult is what, Greg Tito individually, shout out to Greg Tito, and WotC as an organization, reached out to me like, hey, you're right. We didn't know. We do need help, and they brought in me, they brought in Tanya DePass, they brought in Gabe James, they brought in all kinds of people. So they're trying to diversify, but it's hard to tilt that behemoth though, once it's sailing. So I don't knock them for these things.
I don't think it was like, back in the day, Gary Gygax was, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna it comes from a place of misunderstanding to begin with. And there are a lot of there's something to be said for the idea that there's a lot of RPGs that do utilize certain pagan concepts, and that makes people research them more and introduces them to certain things. And there's a lot of like sort of especially in the heathenism, which is is like the Odin Thor style religion, which in modern terms is now heathenism. That is seen a lot in RPGs across the board, and usually always portrayed in a positive light. It's like, yeah, we like Thor's cool. And so there is a lot to be said. I think B-Dave hit the nail on the head with witchcraft specifically. Is we live in a patriarchy, unfortunately, and so when you have a pagan religion that is very male centric, I feel like it's portrayed more positively, whereas a female centric pagan religion has in the past been like had a lot of energy pushed towards squashing it down. And so we're now living in a society that has been told for thousands of years that it's terrible, and it's a little bit difficult to get over that. So yeah, I don't knock anybody for being like no one's doing this on purpose. It's just an interesting, it's interesting.
You bring up an interesting point that I always find fascinating, in that there's people that never gave up the old Norse religions, and they've seen a revival just like everyone. There's people that like still worship Thor, like straight up, and then you're like, but here he's a superhero, and it's Chris Hemsworth, like I always figure like that's kind of got be a little bit of a mind freak, Yeah, but at least your God's awesome.
Yeah, I think Harry Potter is very similar, where there are some witches that are like super into Harry Potter, and they're like, yeah, witchcraft, and some of them are like, that's not none of that doesn't make any sense. Which is, like I don't like that Harry Potter is so focused on the wands, because magic comes from within, not from a wand.
It's a focus.
And in the book, Harry does magic on his own without a wand, but then all of a sudden he gets a wand and it's all about the wand, and there's
But merch, Ash, merch.
That's true.
That's the real magic.
You
The
can't
real...
sell inner strength.
The real magic is the wands we bought along the way.
$8 a pop.
Exactly. I think you can't sell inner strength is kind of the definition of capitalism if you think about it. You know, capitalism, because you can't sell inner strength. Yeah. I think, well, okay. Obviously, the concept of Harry Potter is a little bit of a minefield, especially with, you know, some of JK's stances, you know, over recent years, but attempting to parse this somewhat.
Yeah.
I think overall, the contribution of Harry Potter was a positive one because it brought back a wondrous mystical worldview to millions of children.
Yeah.
You know, just like slicing. I realized that's like a freaking blowfish. You know, I'm slicing it very finely to cut out the poison parts. You know, but you know, I think that in getting kids to read, quite frankly, I think those two things were good for society in the sense that, you know, when I was growing up, it was Star Wars as being a Jedi, but you know, to a certain extent.
We are still Jedis.
I mean, we're not supposed to talk about it though. You know, again, I already said I'm a proud Sith American. You know, I was going to say to a certain extent, you know, there is not an actual Jedi order, and I don't mean the fact that there's people that identify as Jedi or whatever. I mean, like there's not an actual temple you can go to. When you get kind of in the Harry Potter mythos, if you dig a little bit, once you get past the fantastic and the things she did for literary devices, you actually kind of hit some stuff that's real. That you're like, oh, okay, alchemy. Okay, magical herb. Yeah, herbology. Ooh, you know, and that can send you down a very different path in life.
Oxford.
Yeah, right.
Where the school was.
It's Oxford.
It's a real thing. It's a place. Christchurch.
Been around for a while.
Christchurch.
Yeah. It may or may not have house.
It also started this whole like magic schools. I mean, they were hip before, but now they're like hip, you know, and you've got like with the magicians, and then the new one. What is the new one?
The Discovery of Witches.
The Fae one that's like Wix or something.
Oh yeah.
It's like a fairy college, but it's like the CW's version of a fairy college.
CW's version, yeah.
Yeah, and now I think I could say this because it's on the internet. Magic the Gathering's new expansion is Strixhaven, you know, which is magic schools. It's on the internet, so that's fine.
It's on the internet.
Google it. It's on the internet.
It's there.
Yeah.
Call off the hit team on the NDA. Yeah.
Yeah. But and there's so much of that now. It's like, well, we could learn magic. Let's make everybody learn magic. So yeah, it has. But we're getting off the RPG topic, I think.
No, but it's all part of like cultural zeitgeists and, you know, I mean, entertainment in general, because at the end of the day, gaming is a form of entertainment and it pulls from everywhere else. And
and especially when it's homebrew content, DMs are going to pull from, you know, all sorts of other places to create worlds.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to really quickly. I think, you know, the big change in D&D, which there are other RPGs beyond D&D, of course, but the big change in D&D that I myself have fought for is divorcing the concept of you are good or bad because of what you are. You know, that orcs are bad, that elves are good. And they've loosened the
elves are dicks.
Yeah, exactly. Largely. Well, because if you write just under that, it usually is the fair races are good and the dark races are bad. And even though the alignment restrictions have loosened over time, you still very much had this idea of monstrous races, you know?
Yeah, an elf that wasn't a dick. I'm just going to put that out there. I've never played an elf that wasn't a dick. So
it's true. They're hard to locate. Yeah.
There's reasons for it. Like,
Yeah.
if you spend 200 years learning one spell, you're gonna be like, you're all very bad at this spell, and I'm very good at it.
It's hard when you actually are superior. That is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, we're seeing more and more of that divide, and I think it comes back to the same thing with the portrayal of witches. You know, that it's like, well, that's a witch, therefore it's a CR4 encounter roll initiative, and you're like, what? You know,
or we can say,
can we just talk this through, guys? Can we just see if they're here to help us?
Yeah. It's just the person that has a different skill set than me. Cool. You know, and again, they've kind of compartmentalized it with hags. I'm like, but still, you know, I think this was their effort at even trying to take a step further of making hags not necessarily instantly evil. The problem is, even with the hag blood, hex blood bloodline, now, is you can get turned into a hag and you are still an irretrievable NPC. So there's still like a terrible ultimate, oh God, that's so terrible, I don't want to be like that person, end to the hex blood. But it's, you know, the tide is turning. Whereas you get other games like the World of Darkness, which of course I live in pretty heavily, in the portrayal of witchcraft and things there is usually is a subset of Mage the Ascension, usually, where they're the verbena, that they're the pagan mages, usually. And oftentimes the Inquisition doesn't necessarily show up in Mage too often unless they find out you're around. It's more the technocracy, but the crushing oppressive force of everybody needs to conform is clearly portrayed as the bad guys there. But even so, they get things like true faith, you know, like that's that they have all these powers because of the strength of their belief. And it's like, yeah, but what if their belief is bullshit? Like you're still implying that they're on the right side of this thing, you know? Yeah. So sorry, rant off temporarily.
No, it's fine. And I will say D&D does do a good job of having like a lot of religious options. You know, you can sort of choose all of these, and they have all of these pre-made ones. They're like, hey, or you can like pick your own. And, you know, druids in D&D are also pagans, and they're like, they're good and they're playable, and, you know, they can ascend and have like divine motivations, etc. And again, I wonder if it's because, I don't know, no, whatever. Druids are fine, but witches are bad. Like, it's a weird line. But yeah, a lot of, and Dave knows I can't talk about RPGs without bringing up Hillfolk. But I don't know if you've heard of Hillfolk. It's Pelgrane Press. It's very, you build the world with your players. And at the base game, like if you're just playing the base game, it's like this, it's either Bronze Age or Iron Age village. And you make the zero session is making up the world and choosing the religion. And you like sort of choose your different gods and your different beliefs. And I love stuff like that because I think that's a lot more true to nature of the pagan religion, because it is so much about what you believe and what sort of gets you through the day, and what all of these different tools and things mean to you and your relationship with the divine. And so Hillfolk does this really interesting thing where it's you as a group decide what your game's religion is. And you get to like build that together and be like, you know, these are our lesser gods and these are our major gods and this is our holidays and all of that. And so you're like building this world together. And so you come at it from a point of view that it is yours and you own it a bit more. And so I feel like it removes any kind of negative connotation that might sit in other games where they have a pre-made, this is the religion, this is what the world believes, this is what it is, and this is what you have to play.
Shout out to Hillfields.
Hillfields.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you think about it, really, almost every character in D&D is already leading a pagan existence. For the most part, they're pantheistic. For the most part, you know, or they're at least aware of the fact that these other gods are a thing. I find, though, for the most part, unless you're a cleric, which god you worship or don't worship in D&D doesn't really matter, and hasn't mattered for a really long time, arguably never, except, you know, for OG cleric stuff where like maybe specific domains, but even then a given domain was available to like multiple gods, you know. So I find unless you run into cultists, like right now in the game I'm running for Idle Champions presents the Unfair Seas, 4:00 Pacific on twitch.tv/CNE Games. Cultists of Umberley are, you know, the big foe. But I mean, there is an accounting for the fact, like, if one of the players worships Umberlee, some other things happen. But for the most part, it's just, you know, oh, they're bad people worshiping a bad deity. Roll initiative, you know. I mean, that's kind of oversimplifying it, because the whole point behind Fleet's Wake is everybody's kind of trying to appease Umberlee, goddess of the sea and storms, by the way. And they have this like 1 week long thing where everybody kind of throws treasure in the Umberlee into the ocean to be like, please don't kill us, Umberlee. And she's like, maybe not today, you know. But you know, your actual like a character that worships Tyr and a character that worships Umberlee, unless those two characters choose to make that a thing, is not a thing, you know. Which again is kind of like by default is a pagan existence. In me, I'm old enough, I lived through the Satanic Panic. Like I was there when that was a thing. Like, we laugh about it now, but they were dead serious at the time. That it's like, this game is evil. It is making kids worship the devil. That freaking Tom Hanks movie where he goes crazy from D&D. Yeah, that's all of that was true.
Or that recent film. I forgot the name of it. There's this like more recent film that's like super cheesy, and it's about like how D&D is actually a Satanist cult. And it's amazing. It's amazing. I feel, I don't remember. I'm gonna have to, I don't know. We'll put it in the comments or something.
Yeah, we'll put it in the comments when we find out, when we remember what it is.
Not only do I need to watch it, I should have been in it.
You should have been running the Satanist cult. Unfortunately, true to form to the type of people that make these movies, it was all white people.
They do have the Tom Hanks movie on Amazon for any
Really?
Right, they do. How do I know this? Because I searched it out and I watched it, and oh my god, it's
I haven't seen it. Tell me everything.
Oh, it's choice.
It doesn't go where you think it's going to go. Like, they don't go deep into like, this is a satanic cult, rather than this will trigger people with like underlying mental issues. Like, it's like, probably it won't. But it's a weird ride. I think it's only like $2 to rent it on Amazon. But basically, they play the game like they basically play the game in a LARPing type of setting. So like, instead of just playing on a board game, they go into a cave and they play it in a cave. So they're basically LARPing, and they're all dressed up too. That's
LARPing. That's
as LARPing. One does.
Yeah. No, they do it. They LARP, and Tom Hanks decides like that it's like way too real, and so it triggers like a underlying mental thing that he has, and so he essentially goes like on a he essentially just loses himself in the game and just starts hallucinating and walking around and thinking that he's the character that he plays in the game, etc., etc. It's just watch it. And
I have so many red flags right now.
There's a lot of red flags. Well, it was a TV movie too, so the acting is just choice. Especially like Tom Hanks's acting too is also very choice. Like Tom Hanks.
And he is obviously a very brilliant performer. So
yes, yeah. It's not the Tom Hanks we know, guys.
It's worth seeing
I want to
once.
watch it right now. I just
it's like 88, 92. Like it's around there. Like it's
So the film I was talking about is a short film called Dark Dungeons. It was made in 2014 based on a Christian comic that was made in the 80s. So they've basically taken the comic and just made the film. And it's amazing.
Where did they air it? Was it just like a low budget one-off thing?
Like TV in at 2 a.m.
I watched it on YouTube.
Okay.
They actually did a Kickstarter in 2013 to raise money for it. And so I feel like the people making it was definitely an in-joke, but they got the permission from the Jack writer, the guy who wrote the original comic. and the Christian organization that published it, they got permission from that organization to make this film under the guise that they were making a serious film, and made this thing, and it's just insane.
You know, Ash, when society restarts and we can be together again, I'm gonna hold that particular experience till we can watch that one together. I'll put that
I feel
one.
like this is a movie night type scenario. I do.
Really
I do.
is.
Yeah, Dark Dungeons
With-
and then Tom Hanks.
Probably copious amounts of alcohol, and we'll see. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, you brought up a really interesting point, and B Dave, this was actually something we talked about a little bit when you were on before, is that, you know, people don't necessarily have a full understanding when they are pulling these elements of witchcraft or paganism into their films, into their products. But that also brings the issue that a lot of the stuff that they are pulling from does tend to be white Eurocentric, and that, okay, you see your Viking influence, you see your Celtic influences, but that's this much of the world, and you've got all of the paganistic belief systems that existed everywhere else.
Yeah.
And and B Dave, obviously you talked about this a lot, about getting more diverse voices to help get these stories told and have things represented accurately. So it's like, people think of paganism, they think a bunch of, white people dancing around a circle with fire. And it's like, well, no, there's other continents where they had their own paganistic beliefs.
Actually, Ash, again, deferring to you as expert, just since a lot of people don't necessarily understand the word, how do you define paganism? What constitutes a pagan religion?
Well, I mean, the word has changed. Originally, it was a word actually created by Christians. It's kind of like Yankee, where we took it. But it was a word created by Christians just to mean similar to heathens, where it's the pagan is the non-Christian. And so originally it was non-Christian evil people, and it has come to represent, for me at least, non-Abrahamic religions that tend to be polytheistic. And I heavily associate it with earth religions, but it doesn't, for me, it's just non-Abrahamic, pre-Abrahamic polytheistic religions, and there is a wide swath. So that's what it is for me.
I defined it similarly. Yeah. I mean, it is a very general catch-all phrase, like saying Westerner. Like, as America, Canada, England, is that France? Is that Mexico? Are we, yeah, definitely.
Hawaii. Bunch of Westerners.
Huna. Hawaiian Huna. That's my jam. It's part of why I wore this shirt.
Yeah. But yeah, you're totally right, Lindsay. Like, because there's a lot of especially the Creole religions and the African religions and voodoo and hoodoo that also get lumped into that sort of like negative light, which sucks. And voodoo especially gets misrepresented a lot. It's not even technically pronounced voodoo, which is, I think, one of the ways you're not talking about the real religion. But yeah, it's like everyone's like, oh, it's all curses and blood sacrifices. And if you talk to an actual like priest or priestess, they're like, yeah, we don't really sacrifice things like that. That's not really no. They do use like the blood of chickens and stuff, but it's sort of like before they make it for food, they do a ritual to like honor the chicken.
And we don't need to go into all the examples of animal sacrifice that are in the Bible. So
sure. Up to and including people. Yeah, the fatted calf. Well, and also remember what I said at the beginning, that, secrecy is so often a component of these things. What comes along with that is also a lot of times there's things that they tell outsiders that they know is nonsense. Like, they know it's a joke, but you don't. And then people run back and they're like, "Ooh, they're biting the heads off chickens." And you're like, okay, that's out now.
Well, but it also is obviously very deeply tied to colonialism and racism. I mean, obviously, we saw that with, Latin American cultures who were having to conform to Christianity and trying to save elements of their religion and morphing it. And the same thing, obviously, with slavery in this country, is like people trying to preserve, but they're also having to be, they are being categorized as other and other is different and bad. So a lot of these like, you know, fantastical, nonsensical stories emerge because the people who are in power are trying to keep those others separate, and it comes out in religion and
Well, yeah, that's like the Yoruba faith in particular.
Yes.
A lot of it has it's indigenous religion that has like a veneer of Catholicism painted over it. But the door swings both ways, though. That, you know, early Christianity took popular elements of paganism to kind of make it more palatable when it became the state religion of a very metropolitan Roman Empire. That's the veneration of Mary was the divine mother, the Isis, like many places, the divine mother. The fact that Jesus is born on December 25th, when he probably was born sometime in September. Sunday being the Sabbath when it very clearly was supposed to be Saturday. Like all of these things was
Easter.
Yeah.
The fertility
Easter.
festival that was modeled after Ostara.
Yeah, it's funny though, because in my trajectory, it's funny growing up, because I'm from Arkansas. I was raised Southern Baptist, and when I first found out about the pagan roots of like Easter and things like that, it was like, oh no, it's bad. I'm not gonna sacrifice anymore. I mean, not gonna I said out loud, we're doing the sacrifices. Not gonna observe it anymore. And then a couple years passed and learned some more stuff. It was like, oh yeah, no, Easter, yeah, no, Easter, yeah, right. Like, bring it all back in here when you understand what it is. So the
Yule in general,
Yule, all of it,
literally everything,
literally everything. Like if you get
caroling,
the day off work for
the
it,
tree, the holly, the 12 days is the 12 days of Yule. 12 days of Christmas doesn't make sense. What days are those? What days?
And it will, because again, it was co-opted to and I wonder, I've gone back and forth about this over time, to what extent were they seriously trying to co-opt these things with a straight face, or even they were kind of in on the gag, because Constantine himself didn't convert till his deathbed. He worshipped Sol Invictus all along. So being able to be like, no, that's Christian, no, that's Christian too, no, that's Christian, no, don't worry about it, no, it's Christian, or to the extent they were like, no, this is ours now. I don't know. But it's this idea that there was ever like an ultra pure version of things doesn't really exist, unless theoretically it's kind of mystical Judaism, which is probably what Jesus himself, believed, because Jesus and the 12 disciples were all Jewish. And then it became this other thing after their death. So the idea of a pure Christianity, there kind of never was one.
Yeah. And a lot of that also, the Catholic Church sort of like, for whatever reason, was like, yeah, but we're going to start in Rome. Okay. And the Vatican in Rome was very, very pagan. There were Dianic cults there, like still there. And they were just like, yeah, we'll just marry. Sure. Yeah. Marry. And so it was like where the church began was steeped in polytheism and like there's all this Italian witchcraft that is straight from Dianic cults that is now like there's like Catholic witchcraft or Italian, like what is it called? It's like not home magic. There's a better word for it.
Hedge magic?
Not hedge. It's like within the Catholic Church. There's like it's basically like kitchen magic or whatever.
Yeah, that's what all the veneration of the saints is. When you're like lighting candles and like praying for an intervention from this one given saint. I'm like, you do know what you're doing. Oh, you don't know what you're doing. Oh, okay. No, you keep doing it.
Just keep. Yeah, that's fine. Like Bridget, who was never a person. But RPGs.
Well, so what do you, I mean, so in looking at everything that has been done, how things have changed, all that, if you could be like, what do you think needs to be done or could be done to help try and make things a better, accurate portrayal of how these things have actually existed in reality, and trying to properly implement that representation within the gaming system, the gaming world, so to speak.
Yeah. What I will say with RPGs and with LARPing, there's this, even if the system isn't perfect and not portraying things perfectly, it puts players in a position to walk in the shoes of someone else. And when you have, alternate religions in a world, they're exploring what that means. And if they come from a background where they don't have that, where like Christianity is the only thing, and they get to play this character and like make moral decisions based on this character's, deities and whatever, I think there's the opportunity for people to realize that it's not so different and not so outside of themselves. And I think that's a really great thing to explore. And there's, similarly, like, they have military folks play RPGs to try to explore their PTSD because they get to separate themselves in this character and explore those feelings without feeling, the societal restrictions. They're like, no, I'm playing somebody else who's really sad. I'm not sad. And I think it's the same thing where you get a safe place to explore the idea of having a pagan religion, right? And what that means. So I will say, I think that is great. And I think, that is one thing that is awesome about having paganism in role-playing games, regardless of how they portray it.
Yeah.
In general, I don't know, man, because it's like, so like if you use the actual name of a god, I feel like you have a responsibility to get that information accurate, because otherwise you're just appropriating someone's religion.
Yeah.
You're just using their shits. But you also have the thing where people hear the name of that god and then they can research it and be like, oh, this is an actual belief system. And then like, so it's, I don't know. I haven't made up my mind. I just know sometimes I get real sad when they're like, oh, we're going to use this goddess's name. Also, it's a death cult. It's like, what? No, what? No. But what do you think, B. Dave?
I think it's moving in the right direction. I'm more weighted towards, we will show you something fantastical and then maybe you can go and research it and learn about it. School of thought. In the sense that, because it is something fantastical, in D&D in particular, if I'm in Waterdeep, and there is a cult of Ishtar or something set up, like I don't necessarily need an ultra accurate portrayal of how the Sumerians saw Ishtar in that context, personally. I think, again, it does require some sensitivity to whenever you're tapping into something that someone really truly believes still, and should adjust accordingly.
Right.
I think, again, this idea of like, oh, the witches are bad is changing, on a massive level, like you said, with the magicians, with all of this, portrayal of magic and mysticism. So I think it's going in the right direction. And I think, again, obviously I cannot speak for everybody that is on the path, but to have something that for centuries would have gotten you killed, and very much had to work to make sure no one ever found out about.
And some places still will.
Yeah, it's true. Some places still will. To have progressed to the point that now we can talk about it openly, but you're just kind of off about it, is still progress. And and maybe it will get there. It will get there in the future. But I mean, again, it is true, like I talked about last time. All sorts of oppressed and suppressed communities have had their ideas and things co-opted. And speaking, from my perspective, people sharing things from the African diaspora, drawing on African mythology, drawing on even, Southern Black mythology, because it was a whole different thing that we kind of had to do because we got cut off from everybody else. I have literally no problem with that. Like, enjoy our stories. Just credit us that they're our stories.
Right.
That's all. Like again, if Genevieve wants to rock cornrows, I'm all for it. I think it's great. It's only when like the Cardassians were like, we're gonna trademark this hairstyle. You will not. No, you won't. No, you will not. That's all. That's what it is to me. This idea of appropriation comes down to a question of credit. You know, like, am I participating in a tradition that I freely, openly express? I'm like, this is their tradition that I'm now participating in, you know, like, again, Hawaiian Huna. It is a passion of mine. I think maybe I'm like reincarnated from Hawaii, but I have no directly like traceable thing. I personally don't feel like that precludes me from experiencing this wonderful philosophy and belief system. I just also need to very openly be like, this is their philosophy and belief system, you know, and I am a visitor here, trying my best to understand it. You know, I think as long as you're clear on that, both internally and externally, then you know, enjoy yourself. Yeah.
Well, that raises a really interesting question because, you know, one of the things that we've talked a little bit about is that how things are represented and portrayed in society directly translates into how they're represented in, you know, a gaming world, but how that could almost be the reverse. Cause, you know, as you and I have talked about the fact that like, we know so many people who are not out of the proverbial broom closet in 2021, people are still very nervous to make that side of them known. And so you know, in the real world, I think, you know, there is still so much misunderstanding as to what it means to be on the path, you know, to be following that. And it's
I had an issue at work this week because of it.
So if people aren't seeing it in the everyday, or they're seeing it as like, oh, that's something that's fantasy, that doesn't exist, that existed, you know, hundreds of years ago, it's not a thing that people do now. So, you know, of course it's going to be represented like this in a game, you know. It seems like maybe, you know, the discourse needs to change in society to get it represented properly there. But do you think there might be an opportunity, like B-Dave was saying, like you hear about something in research, it's like, well, hey, if we can get some decent portrayals and representation in this game system, then maybe we can be like, oh, this is a thing that actually does exist now in 2021 that people still follow.
Well, I think it was going back to what B. Dave said about D&D, where it's, I think the most important thing is that there isn't like things that are, or races or religions or whatever that are just bad. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's the biggest issue, is not only that it's this other, but that it's this bad other. And so there's a lot about, especially, you know, the certain very specific religions that are seen as just evil. And if you follow those religions, you're just evil. And I think that's the biggest problem. And it's, you know, like I was saying, I had an issue at work this week where I am out of the broom closet, but I still like to be the one to tell people. And I had a friend at work tell another person that I was a witch. And I had just met this person. And it's not that I had a problem with him knowing, it's that it caused an issue, because he basically asked if he was joking, but he asked if they were safe. And he was like, you're not going to like curse us, right? And you're not, do you have like Eye of Newt and all of that stuff? And I was like, well, technically, yes, because that's just mustard seed. That's just an Elizabethan term for mustard seed. So I do have Eye of Newt. But yeah, it's like the initial reaction is, oh, you're going to put curses on us and you do bad magic, etc. And it's like, yeah, it's 2021. Like, no, I don't go around cursing people and doing like dark magic, you know.
Maybe.
That you know of.
Yeah, right. Maybe don't fuck with me.
Yeah, and if I do, they deserve it. But it's like, yeah, I think just having the portrayal of, like, if you're gonna have these things in your game, don't make the decision that all of them are evil, you know, because that's.
Hey, Glinda the Good Witch was the real villain of the Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
She was. Have you never read the breakdown of why Glinda the Good Witch is the true villain?
Please don't.
Oh yeah. No, Google it. I can't do it justice, but like, Glinda the Good Witch is the real villain. Like, there's like, when it like gets broken down, itemized, you're like, oh my god,
right?
She's terrible.
I'm open.
And then the Wicked, but well, obviously the musical was based on the book. Did a good job of being like, hey, this is what happens when you're born green and everybody thinks that you're a freak and hates you. And, you know, oh, and I'm just trying to save the animals who are being slaughtered, who are actually people. It's like.
Yeah. And it's also super interesting. Wizard of Oz had two witches. One was wicked, one was good.
Yeah.
And that was the portrayal with conical hats were obviously a thing before, but like, you know, the like dressed in black with the green face and the weird nose and flying. And that was all from Wizard of Oz. And so that's like what a witch is now, but just the wicked one. Nobody looks at like a fairy godmother and is like, oh, that's a witch as well. That is obviously an iconic witch. So it's really interesting. Like society was like the bad one. That's a witch. That other witch, she's a, I don't know, fairy godmother. She's just a lady with a nice hat.
It was in her name. She was, in fact, the Wicked Witch.
Yes.
But if you think about it, though.
And Glinda the Good Witch. Yeah.
I mean, flying monkeys, I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too. That's terrifying. I'm still afraid of the Wicked Witch of the West, for the record.
I'm not saying she wasn't scary. I'm saying there were 2 witches in that movie.
Yeah.
And everybody owned like what?
4. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Right.
One of them was just legs. But like what everybody remembers as a witch is just the wicked one. Is the good one is just like gone from our proverbial memories or whatever as a witch.
It is wild how quickly that stuff gets like taken up with this, like our portrayal of Santa Claus as the fat man in the red and everything. That's all Coca-Cola. That was an ad campaign, and that's why Santa looks like that. It's just like the soon as we got moving pictures, the world was like, oh, it's that now? Oh, okay, great.
Well, I mean, it goes back to how we started the show. We can't sell inner strength, so we sell everything else.
Capitalism is the reason.
So look, basically, Coca-Cola needs to have a witch as a right. Yeah,
Coke
just
witch.
a good witch.
I feel like Coke Witch is a different show. Also, as a proud lifelong Ventru, I'm all for the capitalistic, definition and redefining of society. Yeah, it's just on occasion maybe we little conscious capitalism, just a little conscious capitalism. Maybe know what you're selling there. Yeah. But
like Glinda has a first name, whereas the Wicked Witch of the West, I don't think she doesn't have a first name, does she, in the movie?
Is she named Falba in the book? I know she's a Falba in Wicked.
Not in the Wizard of Oz books, in the ones that what's his name wrote. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So like maybe that has something to do with it too. It's just like she doesn't have a name. She's just that witch.
Yeah.
Hashtag that witch.
Hashtag that witch. Yeah.
Hashtag not all witches.
Hashtag. Yeah. I will just say that again, there is a very long history of suppressed and oppressed people trying to find a way to continue their traditions and beliefs in secret in a way that was still authentic to them, and that sort of leaking out into pop culture in a way that is at best inaccurate and oftentimes at worst problematic. But I will say in general, it's getting better and moving in the right direction. Even the fact that we can just openly have conversations like this, that you can just say things like, maybe all the witches shouldn't be monsters, and have people be like, oh, you're right. It's all progress. It's again, the tide turns slowly, but it is turning. I think.
Well, that is the perfect way to end the show. Thank you guys so much for being here. I seriously, every time it's like, can we talk for another 4 hours? Because this is just fascinating. Real quick before we sign off, anything you want to shout out where people can find you? Obviously, we can see your social media handles there under your name, but anything you want to shout out before we sign off here?
Again, I can't talk about anything I'm working on right now. So that's but D&D in a Castle. You should, those tickets will be on sale soon. I think the 2021 tickets are already on sale for September and November, and we will soon be posting the 2022 tickets. We are the official D&D vacation, so it will be on the
threatening to do that one year.
Just come, man, just come.
I'll just be your PA.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it afterwards.
We'll talk about it after. Okay, DJ.
Also check out on YouTube Endemion's Gate, which I did towards the beginning of the pandemic. It was like April, May, which is a Hillfolk game that I ran with some amazing people. Cynthia Marie, Mark Muir, Becca Scott, Xander Jeanneret, Luis Carrazzo, Alejandro Cejudo. I feel like there's somebody I'm missing, but feel free to rewatch it or watch it for the first time if you haven't, because there might be something coming up that's a continuation. Who knows?
Yes, B. Walters, and I will be at D&D in a Castle in both September and November. So if you want to hang out and play with me and just sit next to a medieval hearth and drink and pontificate the nature of existence, there you go. You got 2 shots at it. follow me on the tweetagrams at bdavewalters. So many things I can't talk about, so many NDA things, which is weird, but that's our life. And I just do whatever I can do to be close to Ash whenever I can. And thank you all for having me on, Mel.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys. We got the giveaway. Genevieve.
Yes, we have a giveaway today. The code is raffle, so please type code raffle into the chat. We have a video game to give away today. So again, type in code raffle in the chat. We will be announcing the winner at the beginnings of the Realms of Ukador.
So come back in 30 minutes. All right, guys. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.
Bye.